of course. I'm very happy
Yeah,
to answer some questions and to share a bit of my story.
yeah, sure. So let's begin maybe with you introducing yourself to our viewers. Uh, I would have done the honors, but I think it is you who is in the best position to do that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So I'm Tim Agaba, born in Uganda, but I've pretty much bred in South Africa. South Africa
Okay.
is would be considered home, although my heart, a big piece of my heart at least, still remains in Uganda, and I'm still passionate about the place. Um, about my rugby sort of background, I pretty much only started playing rugby quite late in high school,
Mm-hmm.
towards the age of, I mean, it became a bit serious only towards the end of high school, in matric, in fact, the last year of high school.
Okay.
Um, from there, from there, I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to attend the Sharks Academy, which is a quite an established academy in South Africa, probably the best rugby academy in South Africa.
Okay.
Um, and that was a big stepping stone for me because not many people, especially not from the school that I attended, are invited to the Sharks Academy.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
so yeah, I learned a lot there. I obviously didn't have much of a rugby background in high school. Um, I didn't go to a rugby school. My
Yeah,
school
yeah.
was my school was in fact well known for its jazz band. Funny enough,
I know, I know.
not not rugby at all. So
Mm-hmm.
from there I obviously I represented the Sharks under 21s, and I played
Okay.
a bit of age group rugby for the Sharks, but I wasn't able to really break through into the professional realm of things at the Sharks at the time. It was quite difficult. They were
Yeah,
probably the
yeah,
best team in the country at the time, so not many youngsters were getting opportunities there. But I wasn't discouraged. I went on to the University of uh, Port Elizabeth, which is
yeah.
known
Okay.
as Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, where I played Varsity Cup for 3 years, which was really where I managed to sort of break through, so to speak.
Establish yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that went pretty well for me. I played under a really good coach. His name is Brent Janssen van Rensburg. Really,
Okay.
he was really special in terms of nurturing a few of us at NNMU. From there, I went on to play for the Kings, which is the regional sort of the provincial side franchise in South Africa, in the Eastern Cape.
The
Um,
Thousand Kings.
the Southern Kings, yeah, that's right,
Okay.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I was there for 3 years. Um, and then I was presented with the opportunity, of course, to play for the South African Sevens team, which I had to grab with both hands. I always wanted to play Sevens. I just didn't really get the opportunity when I was younger. Um,
Okay.
of course, yeah.
So to cut you short, from varsity games, you directly went into the Sevens Academy, or it
No, no, no.
was
I
during the Varsity Cup that they invited you to the Sevens Academy.
No, it was actually post Varsity Cup. After the Varsity
Okay.
Cup, or after I played Varsity Cup for 3 years, I reached the age threshold. I was a bit too old to continue playing Varsity Cup, but luckily
I know, I know.
luckily, as I graduated out of the Varsity Cup competition, I
Mm-hmm.
was presented with a provincial contract at the Southern Kings. So from there, it was where I proceeded to play for the Blitzboks.
Okay. So
Mm.
which are we talking about here when you joined the Blitzboks?
That was 2015, towards the end of 2015. Yeah, the end of
So
2015.
that's when you started your journey with the Blitzbook. Uh,
That's right.
uh,
Yeah.
before we dive more into the Blitzbook journey, I want you to take us back to when it all began. Like who really who really threw you
Yeah. Yeah.
into the game? Who was it? The
Yeah.
school?
It's funny. Yeah. I guess rugby is really prominent in South African schools in general.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was also a boarder. I was at hostel, so the hostel
Mm-hmm.
is really the backbone of the school. And if you're at hostel, you're expected to pretty much play every sport. Because
That's right.
whenever there were numbers lacking in any kind of field of
Mm-hmm.
sport, they would come to the hostel and pick someone to just sort of fill the spaces. So
I get it. I
the
get
host,
it.
yeah. So I played every sport in school. Even in primary school, I was always into into a wide range of different sports.
Yeah.
But when I got to high school, of course, the influence of the whole rugby community obviously got to me. All my friends had already, the new friends that I made in high school had already sort of had a rugby background. And the whole school, I mean, it wasn't a rugby school, but there really was a big emphasis on rugby, specifically. And that's where it pretty much began. I was influenced by the surroundings. And our first team coach at the time, his name Mr. William Pringle, he saw something special in me quite early. I didn't see it myself, actually, to be quite honest. But he was the
Okay.
encouragement, I think, that sort of pushed me to take rugby seriously. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before you joined the Blitzbook camp, were you really interested, interested in an opportunity to represent your country of birth, Uganda? All
In fact,
really,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, funny story. I was playing Varsity Cup. I think it was my second year playing in the Varsity Cup, and I
Mm-hmm.
received a phone call from, I guess, the coach at the time of the Cranes. Are there?
Uh-huh. Yeah, the Uganda
Yeah,
Rugby Cranes. Yeah.
yeah, the Cranes. Yeah, yeah. So he called me just before I was selected to represent South African students, which
Mm-hmm.
was a team that they put together that involved, I guess, the best players of the Varsity Cup. They
Yeah, yeah.
chose the South African universities team, which went to play in. I mean, we played against the Namibian national side. We
Uh-huh.
also traveled to Russia, Kazan in Russia, which was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, so I've lost my train of thought now.
No, no, no. So,
Yeah, yeah. So where were we going? Sorry, I've lost myself. I've lost myself completely,
like we
actually.
were talking about the call, about the call up of Uganda.
Oh yes, of course. Sorry. Yeah, so he called just before that tournament, and he offered me the opportunity to play for Uganda. And
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity had never come before. If it
Mm-hmm.
had come earlier, I probably would have taken it because I didn't see myself as a representative of South African rugby terms. I didn't think
I know, I know.
I was, yes, but then of course the opportunity to play for South African universities would have presented further opportunities after that. And
Yeah, yeah,
if I had chosen to represent Uganda, I would have forfeited any opportunity to represent South Africa in future. So that would have uh, that would have dampened things if in terms of the quality of rugby here in South Africa. It's sort of at the moment, well, not at the moment. It's been that way for a while, but it's a bit, you can't really compare the two. South
yeah,
Africa
yeah, yeah.
was really or is best in the world at the moment. But at the time, even we were real contenders at being the best in the world. So
That's true.
that was obviously a big goal, and probably the driving force in me rejecting the offer to play for Uganda instead of at least aspiring to reach South African colors at some point.
That's true. And as
Yeah.
you told us in the beginning, you consider yourself South African bred, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, we understand like growing up from as a kid through the schools and everything. So, yeah, it was
Yeah,
maybe pretty
yeah.
much a straightforward decision for you.
I mean, not necessarily. I was bred in South Africa, but
Hmm.
had the Ugandan Rugby Union maybe been more competitive on the world stage, I
Yeah,
think I would have seriously considered that.
considered
If
it. Yeah, yeah,
if you look at the Ugandan seven system now, where it is now compared to what was that, close to 10, that was 2014,
yeah. Hmm.
5 years ago,
Yeah,
um, it's miles ahead of what it was, a few years ago. So
that's true.
so
That's true.
so if that was the case at the time, having not really had the opportunity to play for the Blitzboks, I would have seriously considered it. Yeah.
Yeah, and many boys on here watching. Yeah, I think they really appreciate the commendation, and I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Phillips. I'm sure you know some of the boys who are trying to put the flag high. The Phillips. And
Yeah,
yeah, the
Philip,
only
I must say he's a special player. I hope his career takes off.
yeah, and as we are chatting, most of them I have a few questions, and I would encourage them to just in the comment section to forward their questions. We shall chat them a little bit by bit as we continue with the conversation.
Perfect.
Yeah, so Tim, going into the Blitzbook setup, how was it for you in the beginning? Really, you've played maybe for the because maybe you had skipped it had skipped your mind because you had just gone
Yeah,
directly to the Springs book setup. But
yeah,
from representing the South African varsity schools and everything into the Blitzbook setup, finding the likes of Cecile Africa.
mm,
I think by then even which year was it? Was Habana still part of the set? Yeah, I think you went with
yeah,
Habana to the
yeah, yeah,
Olympics. Yeah, yeah, I remember.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I joined when they had put together a really big squad of even 15s players that were sort of gonna contend for that Olympic
Mm-hmm.
jersey. Um, so yeah, I was thrown into the deep end, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Pretty much no sevens background. I'm not an established 15s player either at the time. I'm really just breaking into the 15s game,
Mm-hmm.
but I did have the sort of attributes, you know, that a sevens player would need to have as a foundation, if you want to put it that way. That's where I
That's
was
right.
lucky, but having the likes of Brian Habana and of course the legends like Cecil and Philip Snyman, you know, etc.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was really a driving force, in fact, for me. If guys like that didn't exist, I don't think I would have been as motivated as I was to really try and make that team. Because going into the whole thing, I had a lot of doubts, to be very honest. I don't know why we often wait for someone to legitimize us before we before we sort of back ourselves, you know. So
I know, I know, I know.
yeah, I didn't really have much confidence in myself as a sevens player. Whenever a 15s player even thinks of sevens, it's almost just a negative thought straight away because the conditioning is out of this world. You know, lasting even just 7 minutes on that field is is really quite a task. You know, so
Yeah, I know.
so it was almost overwhelming at the beginning, but I must say the guys, that brotherhood that exists in that seventh system is really special, and they welcome anyone literally with open arms, and as soon as you get there, you'll really feel at home, and that's what happened with me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm sure most of our Ugandan players would like to know what it is really in the South African camp, especially in the seven setup.
mm,
How the setup, how you guys prepare yourselves for the games,
yeah,
for the tournaments and everything. Could you just hint about it?
yeah. So the seventh system is really a special one. I've been involved in one or two different sort of rugby camps, so to speak. But the seventh system, I must say, is really special and really well ironed out, if you want to say, if you want to put
Yeah.
it that way. They've managed to find a formula that really works. The guys that are responsible for recruiting players are really on the ball in terms of recruiting the right guys into that system that'll fit into that system. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you may be a good rugby player to a certain extent, but to fit into that system, it does take a certain type of person, if I can say that.
That's
Um,
right.
so 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 besides their actual system within training and that sort of thing, which works really well for them, the people, the personnel that they employ into that system is really important, and that's really the backbone that keeps that system strong and as successful as it's been for the past, you know, countless, I don't know how many years now. But yeah, yeah, just literally the people that are involved really make the system what it is.
That's true.
Yeah.
It being considered as maybe I could say the second game next to the 15th game, and
Mm,
we us here in Uganda really like we consider it as something that is going to take us to the next level.
mm,
It's not going to be the 15th game, but the seventh game that is going to take us to the next level. Like our
yeah.
neighbors in Kenya.
Kenya.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. what do you think we should do in terms of setup and everything to at least get to the level of
Yeah,
Kenya first?
yeah, I think it's important to start at a real grassroots level.
Hmm.
That's where the South African seven system has really got it right. Like I said, the recruiting system, the guys that they're bringing into the system that last are the ones that really carry the flag, in the long run.
Yeah,
So,
true, true.
so recruiting the right guys and keeping them around, which is difficult because sevens is not as lucrative, if you want to put it that way, as the 15s game. So what happens is a lot of players, once they establish themselves as sevens players, which doesn't take very long often,
True.
they are poached into the 15s game and they're offered a lot of money, which is very hard to
To ignore, yeah.
to reject. Yeah. So I think it's important to start at a grassroots level and to keep those good players within the seventh system, so that there's a sort of reputation, over decades, and
And that's true.
yeah, that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, so moving on to your play time in the books setup. I think you did go to the Commonwealth Games. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
20
Commonwealth
2018.
Games. Yeah, 2018. But first it was Olympics, right?
Yeah. In
Yeah. So
2016. Yeah.
what were your most memorable moments in the book setup?
Um, Olympics, of course, that goes without saying, was the highlight.
Hmm.
That's obviously a highlight of any athlete's career. I'm sure it's the pinnacle of any field of sport. If you reach the Olympic level, then that's pretty much it. So,
Yeah, I know.
um, so that was definitely a highlight for me. Within my sevens career. Um, but making my debut tournament in early 2016 was also a real highlight for me and a hell of a learning curve.
So,
Um,
just to cut you short, you
no
you
problem.
were in the setup in 2015, and in 2016 you're already into the team.
Yeah, that was what surprised me most. I was
I
actually,
know, that's pretty impressive.
yeah, I call it that. I don't know. I think I was kind of lucky. Um,
Hmm.
but what was good at the time is that I was, although I got lucky, the opportunity presented itself, and I was sort of lucky because someone was injured on tour, and I got a phone call back at home
Hmm.
to join the team. On one Sunday morning, and I felt ready at the time.
Hmm.
Often opportunities are presented to us and we're not ready for them, and we let
That's
them
right.
slip. So
That's right.
luckily I was ready, and once I was selected, I was not left out the team after that.
Hmm.
So yeah, of course I'm appreciative of the fact that I was selected in the first place, but I'm also really happy that I was ready when it happened.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
you were part of is it 2017, 2016 HSBC, that Super Sevens team that almost won all tournaments.
Yeah. I mean,
The likes
again,
of
yeah, I was
Winner Cook and Cecile,
exactly.
yeah, you guys were,
Sabelo Sinatla
yeah,
was
Sinatla
was
and
was
everybody,
playing
yeah,
some special rugby. Yeah, yeah.
I
Mm.
remember. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys going into the Olympics in that year, we were all expecting you guys to like bring that gold home. What really happened?
Yeah, it's hard to say. The sevens game is brutal.
Yeah, I know.
Especially when you go into a tournament as a sort of favorite. It never really favors you in the end.
That's true.
Fiji has felt the brunt of that many times.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
but they know how to step it up at big tournaments. They always do. But sometimes when the expectation is a bit much, then things kind of don't go the way you want. But in our case, uh, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what happened. I think we were really a good team. That game against Great Britain was just one of those sevens games where the ball just doesn't bounce for you.
Yeah,
And
I know, I know, I
and
know.
and and when that happens in a sevens game, it's literally the difference between winning and losing. And Of course, the gold medal was our goal, but uh, an Olympic medal, whether gold or bronze, is really special. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
really
yeah.
obviously
I
happy for
really
that.
know that. Yeah, so you've
Mm.
talked about Fiji. Tell us more. How are you guys preparing for Fiji every time you are facing them? Because for us, the fans, every time you guys have to face Fiji, oh my God, it is fireworks, you know?
Yeah, it's special, right?
You
It's
guys
funny that
brand of rugby against the Fijians
mm,
offloading and everything. It's a
yeah,
really special game for us,
it is.
the
It is really
fans.
special, and and
Yeah.
and 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 I was obviously I was a fan before playing sevens. I was a fan
Mm-hmm.
myself, and I knew this. I knew the Fijian players. I knew exactly what Fiji was about,
Yeah,
and going into the seven system and playing for the academy, there were a lot of stories about the Fijians and what they do and how they play and past experiences and whatnot. So there was a lot of hype in general around Fiji. And then in that first tournament in Sydney that I was selected for, we
mm-hmm.
ended up playing against Fiji in I think it was the quarterfinal,
Mm-hmm.
and or I think it was the fourth place. I'm not sure. Not sure what game it was, but Coach Neil Powell decided to give me a start that game, which really blew my mind. I couldn't believe it that I was
Mm-hmm.
that that a week before that I was sitting on the couch, really not really thinking about playing. Well, I was thinking about it, but I didn't really consider it in reality. And
I
then
know.
next thing I'm lacing up my boots to
You're
play
on the
against Fiji.
plane.
Yeah, so that was kind of overwhelming. But after that game, I gained a lot of confidence in the sevens game. Literally just that Fiji game. Although it wasn't the best game of my life, as you
Mm-hmm.
can imagine. Uh, After that game, I gained a lot of confidence, of course, because Fiji is, they are the epitome of sevens rugby, really. So
I
so
know.
getting sort of one up on them gives you a lot of confidence. It's like beating the All Blacks as a 15s rugby player.
I get it.
Mm.
Yeah. So, we've talked about sevens a little bit, and I think we shall get back to it when we get some questions from our viewers. But
Mm.
let's take us into what drove you off the sevens scene to join the 15 setup.
Yeah, so of course, as you know, I was a 15s player going into the sevens system,
Mm-hmm.
and I always planned on coming out and getting back into 15s rugby after finishing with sevens. Um, when I joined the seventh system, I wasn't very young. I was 25, 26 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
the game of sevens is not really suited for
I know, I
for
know, I
older
know.
athletes, if you
Mm-hmm.
if you understand what I mean. So
I know, I know.
after playing three or so seasons and having struggled with an ankle injury and obviously having aspirations in the 15s game, I felt after the Olympics and of course, like I mentioned, the ankle injury. I felt that it was probably the right time for me to go back to 15s and start trying to re-nurture my side of the 15s game.
That's true. So before we talk about 15s, somebody is asking you a question that who was your funniest teammate during those sevens moments?
The funniest, well, there are lots
Yeah.
of clowns in that team, to be honest, but Chris Dry he was probably up there. He still is. He's a clown. He's just by nature a funny
Oh
guy.
my, Chris Dye does not look funny on the pitch. He just looks too
He looks
serious.
angry all the Mm.
Oh
He's
my
he's
God.
actually he's actually the clown. He's a team clown, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his mean mug that he puts on the field is just an act, I think. So I'm gonna throw him down. I'm gonna sell him
So
short. Yeah.
we are seeing all of you guys are living the sevens scene and leaving it to the young boys. Which young boy do you have trust in that seven setup right now, like
Well,
to lead the team forward?
yeah, Stedman Gans,
Mm-hmm.
he's a special player. He's young. He's a leader. He's already got some real experience under his belt. I think he's only 22 years old. He's played Curry Cup for the Bulls. He's played probably more tournaments than I have in the series.
Mm-hmm.
He's captained the side already, so he's a really exciting prospect, and a very good player too. So I think he's one to really keep an eye out for.
Yeah. There are very many interesting young boys on that
They
team.
are. They
Yeah,
are. At
yeah.
the moment, they are. Yeah. Angelo Davis is also a
Yeah,
special one.
Angela Davis, yeah, and
Yeah.
the other Davis, the bigger Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, he got injured towards the end of the last season, but he's also, yeah, very special. He managed,
yeah.
I think, to keep Cecil out of the team,
Mm-hmm.
which is godly almost.
I know.
So yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and as Natla stepping out, anyway, we're going to watch, I think, a new brand of South African young sevens players. Hopefully,
yeah.
they'll keep entertaining us as you guys
They definitely
entertain
will. They
us.
definitely will. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so which sevens player is keeping a close tab on you, and he wants to follow really in your footsteps, and he's like, Tim, you know what, Tim, you need to push me to this. You need to do me this a favor. Show me how to do this. Which sevens player really looks up to you?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's one that really looks up to me. There are a few young players, not only in the seven system, but just young players around South
Hmm.
Africa that often reach out for sort of advice or maybe a training regime or just something like that, which is really encouraging that the youngsters are always hungry to learn and just hungry to reach the top of the rugby ladder in the country.
Yeah. Before I forget, I think you've played a game or two against Uganda. Is that right?
Yes,
Uh,
I think yeah.
how
The one
was
I
that?
remember it was
How
sorry.
was that feeling? How was that feeling?
Yeah, it was
You're
special.
running out.
It was really special. Funny, I was actually on the bench that game. It was in
Hmm.
Dubai 2017, I think 2018.
Yeah.
Um, I came off the bench, but when I actually went onto the field, I think we were only ahead by maybe 2 points. It was
Hmm.
a really close game. It was one of those day one games where everyone's kind of getting a feel for each other and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, going into the game, we never underestimate our opponents in the first place, you know. And I had a bit of a soft spot.
I
You have
know,
to
I
understand.
know. Yeah.
I was almost hoping that we lost to Uganda.
And
Just
give
so
them
that
a lift, you know.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, but yeah, we ended up winning that game. I actually scored a try, which was
Hmm.
kind of contrasting to what I felt, but
I know.
yeah, but it was
But
still nice to play against my countrymen, so to speak.
and I'm sure you had a lot of interactions after the game, telling the boys it was a really nice, brave game, telling them
Yeah, of
what to
course.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes manage to. I mean, they're not on the Ugandan team's not on the World Series itself, so they're not the team isn't at all the tournaments. So when they are, like I think they were in Hong Kong,
Hmm.
if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
they always come to Hong Kong. Yeah.
To Hong Kong, yeah, as
Yeah.
like an invitational, yeah. So whenever they're there, I try and interact with the guys and just just to get to know them. I've obviously seen a lot of Philip, on social media, etc.
Hmm.
Some videos that I see here and there. I don't know what tournaments the guys play, but somehow I see some of the footage and it's really impressive. So I always try to remind them of that when I see them at tournaments.
Yeah. Do some of the boys try to keep in touch with you for advice and something like that on social media?
Not really, not advice. No, not
Hmm.
from the Ugandan, not from the team. Um, um, we've had contact on Instagram with a few guys, but
Hmm.
nothing real. Not much advice, sort of
And
giving and that sort of thing. No.
I know. So if some of them want to really reach out, maybe for how to improve themselves as rugby players and
Yeah,
as
I'd
sevens players,
encourage.
could they reach out to you
Of
on
course,
maybe your Instagram?
I'd encourage them to please reach out to me. I would love to connect in rugby terms with the Ugandan rugby community. I've always wanted to. In fact, I aspire to do something in
Hmm.
Uganda in terms of rugby, whether it's coaching or consulting or anything in that field, just to sort of pay it forward once rugby is in the back seat in my life. So yeah, I'd encourage all rugby players in Uganda just to reach out if you have any question regarding rugby or training or high performance in any way.
Yeah, so for the Ugandan rugby players out there watching, I think you've heard it from the man himself. You can always reach out to him, and really, we thank you, Tim, for giving us that opportunity. I'm sure
Yeah,
many
of course.
young and outstanding players will reach out to you. There was a question from one of the fans who was asking, when you play Kenya, do you really give it like your extra best? You're like, I'm doing
Yeah,
this
no.
for my Ugandan boys.
No. You know what? Playing against Kenya, playing against Kenya is also it's as special as playing against Fiji. If you ask any of
I
the South
know.
African guys,
Those boys
Kenya
are
brings a
really worked.
yeah. They bring a physical element that no other team brings. So you really have to be up for that game, and if not, it'll be a long day out there. So yeah,
And it's like
Kenya takes a
an
lot of mental
African derby.
preparation. Yeah, that too. You know, so it's always special.
I,
They're always out to get us.
I know, and I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Taking us back into your 15th journey, what
Mm.
inspired you to join the Blue Bulls? Or before that, before the Blue Bulls, did you first join another team before you joined the Blue Bulls? Because
No,
I
no.
know you played Curry Cup and then you started playing Super Rugby, right?
Yeah, so at first I tried to balance the two. So I played Curry Cup at the Bulls, and then I would come back to sevens, and then it got to a point where I felt that it wasn't really efficient. My body wasn't really managing so well.
Mm-hmm.
After the Commonwealth Games, uh, and you know, through that year there was a lot of rugby in that year, and I got an injury, and then I decided to just commit to the 15s game and try and achieve the few goals that I had set for myself there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So, in those few goals, do you dream of one day representing the Springboks,
of course.
the 15s, the
That remains
Springbok, your
that remains
ultimate goal?
an ultimate goal, of course. Yeah, yeah,
I know. It is
yeah,
a dream for every South African player. So,
yeah.
I know you've been dogged by a few injuries, and I think this break has presented you with an opportunity, maybe to try to work on your injuries and to heal yourself. How are you handling everything during this time?
Yeah, funny enough, the beginning of this whole lockdown period was was an extreme challenge. Um, I had injured a nerve in my neck, which is considered quite a serious injury. Whenever an injury is associated with the neck, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost a career-ending sort of injury, you
Yeah,
know.
true.
So that sort of obstacle existed before the whole COVID epidemic, pandemic hit the world. It was only after the surgery that I sort of fixed the neck that the lockdown was implemented. So
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like a double blow. But
I know.
it also presented an opportunity to really find myself, not only as an athlete but as a person. I think all of us have been presented with a special opportunity through this pandemic to better ourselves in many different ways. I had sort
That's
of
true.
neglected I'd sort of neglected my studies a little bit because of the Super Rugby campaign that was ensuing. Um, the whole COVID epidemic presented a real opportunity for me to get into my studies and to focus on the areas that I'd like to focus on post rugby, which has been really exciting. Actually, it's turned from a really negative situation to a really positive
To
one, and
a very
going out
positive
of this
one.
lockdown, exactly. I've
You're
managed to
gonna
fix
be
my body. I feel
you're gonna be a changed man.
completely,
Uh,
a different athlete too. I feel, yeah.
Yeah, so talking about the Super Rugby, many of the fans from Uganda really enjoy watching Super Rugby, and
Mm.
I personally was happy to see you on those screens running out. Though I'm a, I should admit I'm a fan of Hurricanes and everything. Personally, I enjoy watching. my countrymen achieve what you achieved. So how
Yeah.
was that feeling? You playing Super Rugby with the New Zealand teams,
Yeah.
Australian teams, and that rotation around the world, going to
Yeah, of
Argentina and
course.
everything.
Of course, that was also a highlight of my career, being presented with the opportunity to play Super Rugby. Um, Playing Super Rugby alone is a special thing, but playing for the Blue Bulls, which is almost the arguably the Real Madrid of South African rugby, you know. So
Yeah, no.
so so um, even as a young player, when I played against the Bulls at under 21 level, it was always a really special occasion. You know, there was something special about the Blue Bulls. I never thought that I'd have the opportunity to play for them one day. But when the opportunity did come, I felt drawn to it almost straight away. And when I was presented with the opportunity to play Super Rugby, of course, that was really special for me. And I mean, I hope I get to play more Super Rugby for the Bulls. But if I don't, I'll always cherish those the few moments I did get to play Super Rugby. And playing for the Bulls made it even more special.
So what was that game that you really that will never really get off your mind?
Well, I managed to get a start the last year against the Sharks. I played about 60 minutes,
Hmm.
which was kind of unexpected at the time, but it was something that I was really striving for. So I couldn't say that I was shocked when it came, you know. Um, but yeah, getting a start for the Bulls at Loftus against the Sharks was extremely
An
special for me,
amazing feeling.
and we got a win there too. So
Hmm.
so that was
And
even more special.
considering it was the team you first
Played
played
for,
with and
exactly.
everything, so it was
Mm,
like sort
yeah.
of a homecoming for you.
Yeah, it was as if the stars aligned themselves and and
I
and
know.
yeah.
And also, you are really getting into that eighth man position. Like it really shocked her, like most of us back here home. Like
Yeah.
you coming from the seventh setup direct into the eighth man position.
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
it really requires. We've seen monstrous players in that position. How was
Mm.
it you conquering that position?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I really conquered it, but I was
Uh-huh.
lucky that John Mitchell at the time when I started at the Bulls, John Mitchell was the coach, and as you know, he's a New Zealander, and New Zealanders sort of they approach the game a little bit differently, if you wanna put it
Hmm.
that way. So I was lucky that he was sort of running the system here at the Bulls at the time, because the brand of rugby that he played really represented who I was as a player. So that's probably why I was selected to play eighth man for him.
So yeah, so talking about the clubs in South Africa, why do you think it is so hard for another Ugandan who has played outside of South Africa to really make it into the South African team setup? Like I'm talking about the franchise level.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, of course it's difficult because there's a whole lot of aspiring professional rugby players, not only in South Africa, but from all over the world that would love to play for teams in South Africa. So it is difficult to get into in the first place. I wouldn't say it's an isolated struggle for just like Ugandans, so to
Hmm.
speak, or Africans, if you want to put it that way. Um, I just think that there's a certain standard that's got to be met.
That's true.
The top South African franchises obviously play in the Super Rugby competition. So, I've lost you there. There
Here.
we are. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So, a Super Rugby franchise has a really high standard when it comes to recruiting players and obviously recruiting for Super Rugby campaigns.
That's
So,
true.
yeah, yeah. So it's just really a high standard. Again, I think at grassroots is where a Ugandan player needs to try and make his way into South Africa. At a professional level, it might be too late,
It might be too
because
late. Yeah, that's right.
the pool of players in South Africa is so broad, and there's so many good players already in South Africa that it would be that not. I wouldn't say it would be unwise, but it does make it quite difficult for players outside of South Africa to try and break through into these Super Rugby franchises.
Yeah. So, what could be your advice to Ugandans, to really get themselves in shape, or maybe to get such an opportunity at maybe because as you also know, our schools are not really that rugby schools and everything, and for a
Yeah,
Ugandan to get out of school, the size is still I could
yeah.
say still cartoon.
Yeah. It is difficult because of the lack of sort of rugby backing in the country. As it was though for me growing up, wanting to become a professional rugby player wasn't realistic.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough, like I said, to have someone like Mr. William Pringle who really backed me, and he really showed me that playing professional rugby wasn't a wild dream. It was quite realistic. So I think mentorship is important for young players. Like I said, we often feel like we need to be legitimized by someone. We need to be forced by someone and almost believed in by someone in order to really live out what it is that we want to do. Our dreams. So I
that's
would
true.
encourage young players not to lose focus of that dream. It's easy to become distracted and to become discouraged because it's not normal what trying to be a professional rugby player as you can, and especially in South Africa.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
really felt like I had no business becoming a professional
No.
becoming a professional rugby player. But I was consistently focused on the end goal, and I tried not to become deferred often. It is a struggle as a teenager, and then going into the freedom of leaving high school and leaving home. It's easy to become distracted. A lot of good players that come out of high school face that problem, and they fall by the wayside. So ultimately, I think mentorship and just being consistently focused on the greater goal is extremely important.
That's true. Yeah. So, Tim, for the Ugandan rugby players and maybe some South African rugby players watching out there, the young guys who are looking up to you, what advice do you give them for the life to lead as a pro rugby player, in terms of meal preparation, mental preparation, how you
Yeah,
carry yourself generally in your life?
yeah. To add to what I've just said, I mean that's probably my greatest piece of advice is is what I've just said. But
Hmm.
like you've mentioned, things like your psychology and your nutrition, your training regimes, your sleeping patterns. These are all areas that I had no knowledge of, in high school, even after high school at the Sharks Academy. These things weren't really focused. There wasn't much focus on these areas, especially psychology, which is an important one.
Sure.
So, I'd encourage young players to seek knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge out there now. Um, I wish professional athletes themselves would reach out to younger players and just sort of extend, open arms in terms of the psychology that comes with being a professional athlete, because it does get difficult at times when you're faced
That's
with
true.
long-term injuries and that sort of thing. Again, that's where mentorship would come in, because a mentor can really carry a player through an injury, or can instill sort of principles in a player that carries them through an injury, or through maybe not being selected, or anything like that. So um, yeah, I really encourage young players to seek knowledge. There's a lot of sports psychology out there nowadays.
That's true.
There's a lot of different ways of training that people are adopting nowadays. Um, so yeah, as aspiring young players, looking for information is really important.
That's true. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
to take you back a little bit to Uganda, do you really follow, or to some extent follow rugby back in Uganda?
It's quite difficult too.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say that I follow it. Um, I try as much as I can to watch the guys play sevens. I do know Alex. He's a hooker, I think, for the national team.
Mm-hmm.
He's in contact with me pretty often, and
Alex.
Alex, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. He
He's now retired. Yeah.
he's retired. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's quite a passionate guy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he was one that would often reach out to me for information on supplements. He's a big guy, so
Yeah, yeah, I know
he's
him. Yeah.
obviously interested in that. In fact, I met with him when I last visited Uganda,
Mm-hmm.
which was quite nice. But yeah, I don't. He keeps me updated more than the TV does, I think.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so how often do you come to Uganda? Because the next time you come to Uganda, maybe we should host you at one of our rugby clubs.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, uh, I don't really go very often. Sadly enough, the most that we often end up going there for whether it's like sort of family,
Yeah, I think I
whether it's a
remember
wedding or
the last time
yeah,
you were in Uganda was around Christmas time.
yeah, exactly. And we're there for a
Yeah.
sort of celebration sort of thing.
Oh,
But
I get it.
I would like to go and just sort of explore Uganda more. I haven't really had the opportunity of doing that.
That's
So
true.
so so whenever I go there, we either just in Kabale, the village that my dad is originally from, or we
Mm-hmm.
spend time in the capital, which is pretty much what everyone does. So
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
I haven't really had the opportunity of seeing uh, the real Uganda. I'd like to do that at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, after maybe your professional career, you will get more time to indulge
Yeah, yeah,
yourself in Uganda and get to
certainly.
know Uganda as a rugby playing nation.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we are hoping to at least get some of you guys on board to give us that knowledge, which we indeed most of the times lack going forward.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I'd love to play a part in that.
yeah, so we are certainly now going into you as team, not a rugby player, but who is Tim Agaba?
Yeah. Who is Tim Agaba?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very broad question. You'd have to specify a little bit more.
Yeah, so we are seeing you branch off a little bit of rugby into maybe trying some fitness, maybe class, something like that
Yeah.
with the COVID-19.
So yeah. So health and fitness has been my passion before rugby even came about. Like I said, I played every sport under the moon. I wanted to be great at. If I try to play it, I wanted to be the best at it.
Hmm.
So that fitness element and building my body and the anatomy of the body and how the biology of the body has always been my interest. I'm studying sports science at the moment, so after
Okay.
rugby, I'd like to enter that field. Um, which is why I've sort of started trying to break into that health and fitness niche right now. Um, the COVID-19 pandemic has obviously presented us with a lot of time, so it's also an opportunity for me to show young aspiring players what they can do in terms of training at home. We all don't have access to gyms at the moment, so it's important, I think, to
That's
sort of
true.
pay it forward and let people know how they can train at home.
Yeah, I'm quite sure if maybe you tried setting it up back home with a help of a few rugby players, yeah, you could your program could be a hit because I'm sure very many players could take it up. Uh,
Yeah, in fact, I encourage everyone that's listening to this to keep a close eye on my Instagram page because there'll be some exciting training content and some footage of myself doing some out of the box sort of training.
mhm.
Um, I do have some future aspirations that will hopefully start to materialize quite soon, but I encourage everyone to keep a close eye out for that. They will be at some stage. It's still quite early right now, but at some stage there will be literally a platform where people will have access to all kinds of training programs, diets, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where I'm sort of aspiring to head in the near future. So to everyone out there, please keep an eye out for the upcoming videos. I think it's going to be quite special.
Yeah, so pretty much, I think me, I've exhausted most of the questions I had for you, but now we would like to hear from you if you have more to say about maybe Ugandan rugby. You've given advice to the Ugandan players, but maybe you could just talk about Ugandan rugby in general, how you think it could grow and everything.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on perhaps the strength and conditioning side of rugby, more specifically in Uganda. I don't know what the level of expertise is in terms of strength and conditioning. I think that's a really important area that upcoming professional teams are maybe missing.
Yeah,
When you look at really professional teams and successful teams, their strength and conditioning department is always of the highest quality and really high standard. They always have the latest technology involved. The science is always up to date. Their GPS systems and all that kind of thing. The technology really helps in terms of fitness. Excuse me.
yeah,
And I feel the the sort of aspiring professional teams, they're lacking in that department, and if that side of things can be sort of uplifted, it would make a really big difference, especially once again at a grassroots level. If strength and conditioning could be implemented at schools. I know we had PE classes, physical education classes at school, but they were really lousy. Sometimes we'd even be playing, whatever games that didn't really teach you much. It was just a matter of being outside and messing around. But I think we could take better advantage of those opportunities in schools,
that's
especially from
true.
a rugby perspective, where I think strength and conditioning is really lacking in places like Uganda, where there's potential. I think there's great potential, and
Yeah, I
the
think,
natural physiques of African athletes is the
yeah, it's
foundation
quite
is already
great.
above the rest. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
because to be pretty honest, we don't actually, for the Ugandan national team, we need to hire like a strength and conditioning coach from Kenya, which doesn't really do us that good. Though he
yeah,
really helps. Kimani has been a good help to us, but I think we could go a long way in nurturing our own S&C coaches. You
exactly. I think
know.
that's really important, and I think that's the area that I'd like to have an influence in terms of Ugandan rugby in the future.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Tim, some questions are from the fans here. Uh,
hmm
what you do outside rugby?
I mean, like I've said, I've got this project that's going on at the moment. So a lot of my time has been dedicated to that, not only training, which takes up a big portion of my day, but trying to figure out the ins and outs of business has been quite a focus of mine. I
Hmm.
mentioned earlier that I've tried to study a bit more. Um, I'm finishing my diploma in exercise
Sorry.
science now, hopefully that out the way. Um, no problem. Hopefully in the next few months I'll have that out the way. And yeah, I mean, I enjoy reading and taking in knowledge. We touched on psychology and sport. That's been
That's
an
true.
area of interest. That's been a real area of interest. Strength and conditioning, of course, is a big area of interest for me. And then movement. Movement has become a sort of very popular uh, aspect in all sports, really, and I think it's really important in rugby, actually. So I've looked into movement and the new school ways of training, which have been really beneficial to me. I've obviously come back from this spine injury, So adapting different sorts of movements in my training
Hmm.
has really been beneficial, and I think that is going to be the future quite soon.
Yeah, that's very right.
Mm.
Yeah, so Tim,
Yeah.
if you were presented with an opportunity to play maybe outside South Africa, which country would that be that you dream of playing in?
Yeah, I don't think I've dreamt necessarily of playing in any specific country, but I am, of course, open to the opportunity of playing abroad, just to get a different perspective of what rugby is like. I've obviously had some insight into what rugby is like in the sevens world,
Hmm.
having played a few tournaments in the World Series and having traveled around a bit. You kind of get a feel for the rugby culture in certain countries. But yeah, I'd like to just get a different perspective of rugby
Maybe
in a
we
different
should
country.
we should have you here in the US at some point.
Yeah, I mean, why not? The league. I've heard the league there is improving.
Yeah,
Uh,
then the Beast was here, and the
exactly.
season was cut short, but it was pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess there was some fireworks in that tournament, which was
Yeah,
held.
exactly. Ma Nonu was there.
Yeah, Manon was there. Yeah,
Busteroo, the French center, was there.
yeah. It is.
Mm.
It is actually a pretty good, decent tournament.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if maybe you want to keep the Super Rugby knocks off and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That is something that's a realistic sort of opportunity that I would consider, of course.
Yeah, so this live video is ending in about 130 seconds. So I would like us to end it.